Hey everybody, my name is Fallout, and stop me if you've heard this one before. Yeah, things are okay right now, but nowhere near as amazing as Year 1. And I don't mean D2 Year 1. I'm talking about the folks who are always throwing it back to the original Year 1, the first year of Destiny 1 PvP. If you've been playing Destiny since all the way back in 2014, you've probably heard a lot of PvP players talk pretty fondly about Year 1. Things were really different back then. If your first experience with Destiny was picking up D2, it's really hard to paint an accurate picture of the landscape back in the days of Year 1 D1. As some people might tell you, at certain times, it was almost like the Wild West, both in how completely ruthless the PvP competition was, and, to a degree, in the style of preferred weaponry. I think you know what I'm talking about. Specifically, the Last Word and Thorn were meta-defining weapons, and if you were going into a game with the intention of full-on winning, it was rare that you'd bump into a team of Guardians not running at least one of those hand cannons. Ever since Year 1, though, things eventually began to change. Every so often, Bungie would drop a large Sandbox update into the community's lap, which would noticeably change how PvP was played. That's sort of been an ongoing trend ever since. Metas become very clearly defined, certain weapons become overused, Bungie identifies what they consider things that are in need of change, and while monitoring the community's thoughts on that topic, present us with an update. The question remains though, was Year 1 D1 truly the best? Or are many of us simply looking back on our memories of PvP with rose-tinted glasses? The answer is probably going to be different depending on who you ask. A lot of the diehard PvP community members often speak very fondly of D1 Year 1. The action was fast-paced and there was little room for error. On the other hand, I've spoken with many other players, admittedly more casual in their enjoyment of the Crucible, which, for the record, nothing wrong with that, and they did not enjoy OG Year 1. They're glad that it happened, but they're also glad that it's just a chapter in their memory book of Destiny PvP and that it's behind us. For those of you who experienced it firsthand though, where do you stand? Was Year 1 the most exciting and satisfying PvP meta to date, or are people just kind of being blinded by nostalgia? Let's take a moment to reflect back, and forgive me if I'm pulling any of this information back semi-incorrectly. I mean, you gotta admit, it's been a few years, and it's not like I can flip a switch on my console and take myself back to the Year 1 D1 meta. What were some of the good things that the community generally liked as a whole about D1 Year 1? Again, I know there's no real right answer to this question because everyone's opinion is different. I can only really give my own answer. I remember that at the height of the weapon's popularity, the Thorn and the Last Word meta was quite maddening at times, but that being said, I did really enjoy it. The Last Word remains one of my favorite weapons in the history of Destiny, and I liked the extremely crazy time to kill that gun brought to the table. Not only that, it was just a really unique weapon in both usage and style. Being able to pair that particular hand cannon with a snappy sniper rifle was really satisfying when used the right way. That's another thing. Even though we now finally have the ability to roll with a sniper in the primary position in the current D2 Forsaken meta, it's not 100% the same as it used to be. That might be splitting hairs. It's very, very similar, but the problem still remains where in the current D2 meta, snipers experiencing incoming flinch quite heavily, making it way more of a risk to run with a sniper instead of something really safe like a shotgun. Thorn was another incredibly powerful weapon that popped up a lot in OG Year 1. You know, it always struck me as funny that as much as the community seemed to, at the time, vocally be against the implementation of weapons that did damage over time, the Thorn is still looked back on pretty fondly, for the most part, anyway. I myself loved using the Thorn. Yeah, I know, that'll probably get me an angry comment or two, but you know, what doesn't these days? Despite the annoyance of DOT, Thorn was very satisfying, mostly because it was just so painfully accurate at long range. In its heyday, Thorn was essentially a hand cannon with the range of a scout rifle. If you were a good shot, you could put it to work because that thing had pinpoint accuracy and was a perfect pairing for something like a shotgun. Also, the design was badass, don't argue with me. It really appealed to the 14-year-old Hot Topic wearing edgelord that lives in my heart of hearts. Anyway, Blink was also something from the days of OG Year 1 that took a number of changes over the years. It's still on the current version of D2, but hunters no longer have the ability to do it? I always found that weird. Didn't they, in the canon, learn how to do it by learning from and copying warlocks? What did they just forget? Someone should have written that shit down, don't you think? Original Blink was really snappy and very generous in terms of letting you ready and shoot your weapon around the peak of your jump height. This led to an entire armada of Year 1 apes going completely full aggro with the combination of Blink Shotgun. Again, it's still possible to use Blink Shotgun in current D2, but with the mechanics of Blink slowly changing over time to become gradually more sluggish, it's not quite the same as D1 Year 1. Also, this doesn't pertain directly to the in-game PvP meta, but one thing I've said repeatedly that I really loved about the OG Year 1 that came to us in the House of Wolves expansion was the ability for players to reforge legendary weapons at the gunsmith. Each reforge costed a mode of light, a couple weapon parts, and a little bit of glimmer. Each time you did reforge, it was kind of like pulling a lever on a really big slot machine. You were just completely re-rolling the entire weapon. I know for a fact that a lot of people did not like that system, but to me, I thought it was great. I am very much a weapon perfectionist and will actively go out of my way to farm certain weapons for hours on end in search of a god roll. That being said, doing things like the Dustrock Blues farm, or especially the Mindbenders farm in that painful D2 Nightfall, is enough to drive a man crazy. I know that standing in front of the gunsmith and just handing him resources and pulling the RNG lever over and over wasn't exactly captivating gameplay, but it was easy to do, it took resources to accomplish, and the thrill of getting a god roll was really great. And because reforging was so simple, it meant that more of the player base had the opportunity to chase god roll weapons faster without having to pour hours and hours into one activity for just a chance at getting a particular weapon to drop. None of us have unlimited time to play, and not everybody wants to come home from work or school or whatever and spend several hours doing the Mindbenders farm for only a chance of maybe getting a good gun. I know it wasn't a perfect system, but goddammit, I really liked it. And that seems like a pretty good segue into talking about what some people didn't like about the Year 1 PvP scene. It was fun for a lot of people, but to others, it was a far from perfect system. A lot of people did not like that the meta was, at one point, so fiercely dominated by Thorn and the Last Word that you almost felt as though you were handicapping yourself in-game by using anything but those weapons. The PvP meta around the time of House of Wolves was so intense and fast-paced that I'm sure it turned a lot of people off from playing in PvP who were originally so enthralled by it on release. It kind of branches off into its own question, which I'd be interested to hear your own individual answers to. Destiny's PvP at its absolute best, at its total peak, what do you see it as? What do you want it to be? A fun, welcoming environment where players of varying skill levels are welcome to come in and have kind of stress-free gameplay enjoyment? A game with a thin skill gap that focuses more on all-around fun for all types of players? Or a game with a very large skill gap that almost borders on a game that was designed from the ground up to be a tournament-level competitive game? A game that rewards the very talented and is very unforgiving to those at the bottom of the PvP spectrum. Maybe somewhere in between? There's obviously no real correct answer here, depending on who you ask, but again, with how many people who speak so fondly of D1 Year 1, I'm interested to hear what you think. I myself, I've definitely had fun in PvP after the D1 Year 1 meta, obviously, or this channel wouldn't exist. There have definitely been low points, and metas I was less than fond of, let's say, for sure, but I will admit that I do have incredibly good memories of the crazy fast-paced action that was Year 1 PvP, and in a lot of ways, it may have been my absolute favorite meta. Anyways, enough about me, let me know what you think. Was Year 1 of Destiny 1 the best PvP meta ever? Why or why not? Would you like to see it return to something like that ever again down the road? Hit me with your Year 1 memories, for better or for worse. Alright, personal note, things are a tad slow right now as we move towards the holiday season and as Forsaken begins to cool down just a little bit. But I do plan on fully going back into hardcore content mode in and grinding out more videos once we hit Black Armory. Oh man, so many things I really want to tell you, but I just can't. Not yet, anyway. In time. Anywho, please click the sub button if you haven't already. It's free to do, and it helps me out a whole bunch. Thanks for watching. See you next time.